on one of the last days of May. I said the Shahada.
This is this May 2019?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Really recent.
so right around Ramadan. Okay,
Yeah,
as you were
at
fasting.
the end of Ramadan, basically. I said it just myself. I wasn't going to tell anybody, but I ended up telling 2 Muslim people I met at school, which was really helpful. And then it's just been a big process of like changes, in my life to more align with things. Yeah.
Okay. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so I saw that you have a few questions that you have sent earlier. Do you want to maybe order them and start with something that's most important to you and then make progress with that?
Sure.
Or?
Do you have them pulled up?
Okay, I can do that, yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I have them in a note on my phone.
Yeah.
I feel like one of the big ones is like living life for the sake of Allah, because I think it makes it's easier for me to grasp it in the sense of things that like directly relate to that, like prayer and those types of things, but more like the minute decisions in your life. How do you orient that, and what does that mean?
Okay, so living a life for the sake of Allah, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think one way of thinking about it is two ways, right? Okay, so one way is like obviously once you have that sort of intention and you realize your purpose, right? Some people think, okay, the purpose of the world is to be as comfortable as possible, right? I want to acquire things, and that's my purpose. I just want to be as comfortable as possible, enjoy myself, do what I find enjoyable. Or you can think about it that, look, I'm here to work on myself, right? So that's first and foremost, right? So there's certain things that Allah, the God, the Creator, appreciates and knows and has taught us that these are good for us, right? Such as selflessness, sacrifice, patience, controlling yourself, good manners, realizing that all power belongs to God, right? We can't do anything unless God approves of it and facilitates it. So that sort of mindset, right? And then whatever you do, become part of that thing, right? So for example, like one way I like to think about it, let's say if you're a business owner, right? You're running your own medical clinic, right? So now you have a goal. Okay, my goal from that clinic is I want to provide healthcare to as many people as possible, quality healthcare, right? Now, whatever you do with that identity, with that mission, becomes part of it. So when you are relaxing, right? Let's say taking a nap, you're kind of also doing something that would help your business, right? Because you need that, right? When you're eating healthy, you need that to, have that business progress. As you read different things, it helps you become a better consultant, better doctor, better manager for your clinic, right? So it all becomes aligned. So with that mindset, if you realize that, okay, in general, my identity is that I'm a servant of Allah, I'm a that God has created, and first and foremost, I want to please Allah. And that's what Shahada is, right? Like you're saying that okay, there's no one worthy of worship, of submission, of my full love, my full submission, trust, except Allah. So if you have that identity, then you would always think with that, right? And or at least most of the time you'll think with that, right? So, okay, is this going to help me? How would God view me based on what I'm doing? Because a lot of time we are thinking about it either consciously or unconsciously, that how are my friends looking at me? How is my community looking at me? How are my class fellows looking at me? Or, how am I looking at it myself? Is this something I enjoy or I don't enjoy, right? Because sometimes we may enjoy things that are destructive for us, right? But then when you have that sort of overall mindset, then everything becomes worship. You eating becomes worship. You're drinking, because right now as you're drinking water, right? So you have that in the background, right? Now so that's first thing that you're having in the mindset. The second thing is to seek knowledge, right? Learn the manners that Allah taught us by His messenger. That was the second part of your Shahada, that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, right? So once you learn that, then what would happen is you would try to incorporate His habits, His approach to doing things. So for example, so in the mindset, I have it like, look, you know what? This meeting is for the sake of Allah, right? So if I drink water during this meeting to facilitate the conversation, automatically is part of that, right? Now, let's say if I'm seeking knowledge and I realize that the Prophet Muhammad taught us that when you drink or eat, you say you do it sitting, right? Even as possible, and you say Bismillah, right? So you drink it saying Bismillah, right? And then so that's a habit, following the messenger of Allah, that I drink in the name of Allah, right? And once you've drunk, you say, like once you've consumed your drink, you say Alhamdulillah. Same thing for food, right? So these are some of the things that you can do as actions But that would come by you learning the ways of the Prophet.
So essentially, it's like all based in increasing your taqwa.
Right.
And
Awareness of God, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so then if you set the intention for like bigger things in your life to be for the sake of God, everything you do to support those things is essentially for the sake
Right.
of God. Okay. That makes
So that's a heart and mindset thing, right? Now there are certain things that you can do to make it more consistent and more powerful, right? Such as, reflecting on your life, reflecting on your day, reflecting on your week, right? And having conversation with God about your life and where it's going and so on and so forth, right? So it becomes all part of that. When you're reading Quran, you're reflecting on it. So those things will help intensify it, strengthen that mindset, that culture. And then the second thing you can do is to learn, right? How would the messenger do it, right? How can I incorporate those things in my life, right? And those are key thing is to remember Allah often. So you can remember Allah, obviously, in a formal manner, which is the 5 daily prayers, or during, as you said, like when you're drinking water, when you're eating, when you're driving, right? So at the very least, you say Bismillah, right? So you kind of become aware of it, and if you say it with your heart and consciousness, you become aware of it, right? Now, if you want to take it to the next level, there are specific prayers that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would say when he's entering home, when he's eating, when he's riding, right? So that would apply for us driving, right? When you are changing clothes, when you are buying new clothes, right? So there are specific du'as as well. And I can show you, like, for example, I don't know, did anybody tell you about the app called Muslim Pro?
Yeah, I have that.
Yeah, so if you
I'm
go
like
on,
tracking my prayers.
right, but it is also something in there, it's called du'as.
Yeah.
Is it du'as? And then it gives you du'as for specific instances.
Okay.
So as I say, you don't have to know all of them, but let's say if you wanted to take it to the next level and have a variety of it, then instead of just saying Bismillah, now you can have specific du'as for specific times, right? So there's a specific dua when you go to sleep.
Yeah.
There's a specific dua when you wake up. It's not a must for you to do it, but if you're looking for ways to be more God conscious, be more aware of God, then these would be some of the things that you would do.
Okay. So right now, I'm just doing what is mandatory.
Okay.
So I'm doing the 5 daily prayers for the most part on time.
And do you know how to do them? Like,
yes, I do them in Arabic.
Nice, mashallah. That's very good.
And so having just the basic, what would you think would be the next thing to build onto? So like I do the 5 daily prayers and I'm reading the Quran about halfway through.
Okay.
And I have a few podcasts from people that I listen to. One is about the Prophet's life. I listened to one that kind of broke down verse by verse the Surah of Maryam.
Okay.
Yeah. But what would be like a attainable next thing to?
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So it also depends on your learning style and availability as well. So if you're able to, let's say, come to the mosque and do something, in person, I think that's the best, right? So on that angle, let me give you a few options. So right now, what we have going on is on Sunday mornings, from 10 till 2, we have a program we call it Faith Seekers. So there are different components of it. In the beginning, you learn a bit about Islam, like, who is Allah, what's in the hereafter, understanding Quran, and so on and so forth. Also a bit about how do you worship Allah, the hows of the things. And then there's some activities and, sisterhood or brotherhood building and things like that. So it's a good program if you want to check it out.
Okay.
So that's one option. That's Sunday mornings. Okay. Friday is a very good thing if you're able to. Well, I mean, as a woman, you don't have to come to Friday prayers.
Yeah, it's not mandatory. There's a group of people that do the Friday prayers at my school.
Okay.
But only 2 people at this point know that I have reverted. My family, I haven't told my family, but they know I'm looking into it. We've had lots of conversations over the summer about it, and I haven't told other people at school. So I haven't gone to them because the other Muslim people don't know, and then I was not there.
So you still don't want to be open about it.
Yeah.
So you can. So there's 2 things. One is we can talk about like what's preventing you from opening up now that it's been like 6-8 months something. No, 6 months almost, right? Yeah, so that could be one thing we can talk about. Or you can just go, like, I mean, many times non-Muslims also come for prayers, right? In a sense that
I've come for a few. I went to one Friday prayer at a mosque downtown with a friend, and then we have stopped in before to pray. It's very busy, so it's a little overwhelming at times. Right. Having not been in these environments.
Right. So maybe the school would be a good start, right? Because not too many people, 20 out with Zoom or something.
Okay.
Right.
That's well, yeah.
So that, again, that's one option, right? So you have Sunday mornings, you have Friday at your school or in a mosque. Friday evening, for example, we have a class here Friday evenings, and that's about, Quran. So that's usually like 7:30ish. So if you're available Friday evening, you could come at 7:30. It ends by 9, right? So that's one option. We are starting another class October 1st, Tuesday, 7 to 9. And that's more about heart and spirituality.
Okay.
7 to 9 from October 1st. So that's another option, right?
Okay.
So these are some options at this mosque.
Are these things you have to sign up for a certain number of classes, or they just like drop in?
Yeah, you can drop into.
Okay.
Yeah, but the Faith Seekers program is more, we want people to sign up. The Sunday morning program. Other programs are like, drop in.
Okay.
Right? Even Faith Seekers, you can go check it out and then see if it fits you and whatnot. So these are some of the programs that are here. Obviously, other mosques may have other programs.
Yeah.
There's did I send you about that event that's happening next weekend?
Oh yeah, I'm not in town.
Okay, so those things, for example, if you go and sign up on their mailing list,
Yeah.
so they hold maybe once a month. They actually hold it in a university campus. It's more of a university setting as opposed to a mosque setting.
Okay.
And those are like full day or full weekend seminars. And that institute in particular would let new Muslims have it for free as well.
Okay.
So you can just email them toronto@alkawthar.org and they'll give you like a free pass or whatever.
Oh, cool.
And then you can check those. So again, subscribe to them, right? And then there are other ways that you can know of the events in the city. And then so you can attend things in person. So that's one route. But you have to look at your schedule and then see what you want to try. Second thing is online route. So online is good to go through accredited places. Again, either you can just examine what's accredited and what's good, or you can trust me or trust anybody you can trust, because instead of you just opening up to everything out there, it may be better to find something and then pursue that, and then later on you can diversify, right? So for example, one institute is called New Muslim Academy. Okay. So they have basic courses that teaches you about what is Islam, what is faith, and how you do things in Islam. But they also keep doing monthly webinars on different topics. Okay. So one of the webinars I think they did was what we were talking about earlier, is that how do you increase the remembrance of Allah throughout the day, and how would the Prophet be throughout the day in different activities. So that could be another option. Then if you want, there are other options to actually pursue a Bachelor of Studies, proper studies, right? And there have been many new Muslims, by the way, who came in with no understanding of Arabic, don't know how to read it, and now they're scholars in Islam. So they're teaching Muslims, they're leading teachers of Muslims, right? So the background doesn't matter, right? But again, as I said, start with a bit and then slowly increase. And as you increase, you'll find the topics that help you become more aware of God, because everybody's different. Some people technical stuff. Okay, I want to know how to figure out the hows and what's permissible, what's impermissible. They like that sort of stuff. That's called Buddhism, right? Some people like to do more in-depth studies of Quran. Some people like to do more in-depth studies of the life of the Prophet Muhammad. So the different people may have different preferences as well that would help them come closer to God as well. Okay.
Yeah, I've been slowly implementing some of the lifestyle changes, like stop drinking alcohol, smoking weed, stop eating pork, stuff like that. I think part of the thing that holds me back from telling family and friends is fielding questions that I don't necessarily have all the answers to from them. Because that was a lot of the summer with a lot of questions about things that I'm exploring, but I don't know how to explain.
So on that front, right? So when it comes to talking to family members, my advice is a couple of different things depending on your family, right? So one option is I'm okay, you know what? First off, have a chat with someone who's more supportive of you and relatively more spiritual, and say, hey, you know what? Appreciate you raising me, with good values and connecting with God and whatnot. Based on my research right now, I feel, and I found that this is the closest to what God wants us to do. So I'm going to follow that, and I hope you'll support me in that, right? That does not change our relationship. And if you have any questions, I would be happy to discuss that. And so that's the basic how I would open the dialogue, right? And the second thing I said that, look, some people then become you know what, this is so amazing, I want everybody to become Muslim, right? So instead of having a 24-hour conversation about Islam and why don't you become Muslim, you can set aside some time on a spirituality discussion, right? Okay, once a week, maybe we'll discuss a book together or some chapter together, but we don't want to have this conversation every day, because otherwise it would make it become very tough and stressful, right? So that's what I would recommend. And then you can think of potential questions that they will ask you.
Mm.
Okay, and we can empower you to answer those questions once you have a list of those questions, right? If they ask you something that is not in the list, you say, that's a good thing, and thank you for sharing your concern about this. Let me look into it and get back to you, right? So I think we have done that in the past, and because some people, like, one of the key things people ask is like, okay, Islam and terrorism, right? That's the first thing many people think of.
And Islam and treatment of women. I got a lot over the summer as well.
So okay, great. So both of these things are myths, and they can be still easily demystified, right? So for example, for terrorism, like I have slides and data around what different groups and how much killing they conducted. Those groups, I'm not saying that any group actually promotes that, but from an attribution perspective, they claim to be belonging to Christianity. They claim to be belonging to atheists. They claim to be belonging to Buddhists. They claim to be belonging to Christian. I already mentioned, right? So again, the point being that, look, Islam does not call for terrorism, right? Nor does any other religion, right? It's people and their values and so on and so forth. And you have actual data to back that up, right? Same thing applies, with Islam. In terms of treatment of women, right? So first would be like, okay, how do we understand what Islam says about women, right? Or, well, I mean, when we say Islam, like, what does Allah or God says how should women be treated, right? So how do we know that? Like, would that be judged by how Zubair treats women? Is that a fair judgment?
Well, I think you would read the Quran. And
right. So exactly, right.
But then they pull up that. I'm sure you know which one I'm talking about. The one that's worded a little harshly and alarming.
Okay. Right. So okay. So great.
It's hard to talk about context when I don't know everything.
Right. Okay. Great. So so there are very good presentation on that topic, right? Including like animated videos and whatnot that actually explain that, because everything has to be understood in the context, right? Because so for Quran, the context is like, okay, how did the Prophet Muhammad apply? And so he's known to have never raised his hand on anyone, let alone women, right? Including his servants, including his slaves. No, right? That's not the way you do it, right? There are documented history of, for example, there being dispute between the wives of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and himself, right? And you have recorded history on how he dealt with it, right? How he discussed, how he gave them options on, this is my lifestyle, this is how I want to be, and what are your options, and so on and so forth. Or was he actually physically dealing with that? So you have those examples, right, in the recorded history, and so on and so forth. So you understand it from that perspective, right? Now, one thing to understand is that Islam is also something that kind of draws this boundary for you. So there may be something that are permissible in Islam, right? But that means that, okay, if you need to, then you can go up to this extreme. But beyond that is crossing the boundary of Allah. So you can't go beyond that. So that means that Quran would have a very extreme, the boundary line action that's permissible. But that does not mean that's the normal, right? So the worst scenario is this. You could just go up to that sort of thing. So for example, okay, so if you want to talk about what does Quran say about if there's a dispute between husband and wife, so basic thing the Quran has that if you fear that, if you think that's an issue, then you get people from each side and you try to amend the situation with them. Okay. Now the worst that's controversial, or that's people don't get it too often, is about like, okay, what is the disciplining principle in Islam, right? How do you? So let's say if there's a dispute and things are not working out, right? And now people are considering divorce. How do you discipline the situation for both sides, right? There's a process to it for husbands as well as for wives, right? So how do you discipline it? So those would be like the abnormal circumstances. Those are describing the boundary lines. Same thing applies for, okay, permissibility to marry 4 women, right? That's the boundary line. The most you can have is 4 women. Do you need to have 4 wives to be a good Muslim? No. But if in a certain situation a man wants it and a woman is is okay with being in that sort of situation, then the maximum that he can do is this. But that's not the norm. That doesn't mean that this is how you can be a good Muslim, right? That depends on from a situation to situation. So likewise, anything. So you have to think about like, okay, what's permissible and what's encouraged. I guess you're aware of these 5 rulings in Islam, right? What's a must? What's obligation, right? And then the opposite of that is?
Oh, what's impermissible.
Impermissible or haram, right?
Mhm.
So these are two extremes, right? Yes, no. And then in the middle, you have what's preferred and recommended,
Okay.
and what's disliked.
Okay.
And then in the middle, you have, open things, right?
Okay.
Mubah, right? So in general, there's no virtue of it. You can choose it, right? You can choose to have a blue bottle versus like a red bottle, right? There's no, but again, you may have a secondary intention for that choice that can make it worship, right? So I'm choosing a blue bottle because that's my mom liked it, whatever, right? So you have a secondary intention of pleasing or whatever. But I'm just saying, so the point being that, okay, any ruling in Islam, you can then pick into this 5 categories.
Mhm.
And sometimes the category would also depend on the personal situation.
Mhm.
So for some person, it may be obligatory to have more than one wife, right? For some people, it may be disliked. And for someone, it may be prohibited because of his or her situation. So that's something like as a principle is important to keep in mind when you're discussing with people that, okay, where does that fit? Is that the normal behavior? Is that the encouraged behavior? Is that the boundary line? But again, coming back to your point, so what we can do is we can have those points listed and empower you today or whenever you're ready and say, okay, are you comfortable discussing these points with whoever you're going to be sharing about Islam? And another way is like you become relatively comfortable, but if you need more help, then we bring them in, or we give you content via email, via chat, whatnot, and then you can discuss it with them. Or we can meet them at the mosque, or we can even meet them outside, like at a neutral space, right, like a restaurant or something, and then say, you know what, we understand your family member has become Muslim, and there are many concerns about it, the different things. So if you want to have a chat about what Islam actually means, what would this mean to your relationship, let's meet up, let's discuss these things.
Okay.
So are there anything that we should discuss today so that you're empowered to answer that, or you want to think about it, come up with a list, and then we go with that? Or
I don't think today.
Okay.
Because I think I wanted to have those conversations in person anyways, and
Okay.
my family lives not here. I'm here for school.
Okay.
So it would be at a time when I could actually sit down and have those conversations.
So where are they from? Where they're based?
They live in Barrie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you visit them over weekends, or?
And occasional weekends throughout the semester, yeah.
Got it.
I do. And then I have a reading week and
Got
a
it.
Christmas break, which I'll have to figure out how to navigate Christmas, I guess.
So are they Catholic or religious or just cultural?
My dad, so my parents are separated. My dad is not religious, but he grew up Anglican.
Okay.
And my mom is Catholic, but she's also not very religious or strict in practicing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Christmas for them is also a very cultural thing as opposed to a religious thing as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say so.
Okay.
We don't go to a mass or anything like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you struggle with? Okay, so that's another key thing. Is that what you want to talk about next?
Which one?
I struggle with Islamic views of LGBTQ plus.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Okay.
It's very hard to imagine that's one of the things that stopped me for a really long time, for a while, from reverting. And then even after I reverted, when this topic would come up, I would find it very triggering, and I would question a lot my ability to do this or to submit to what it says. I went to my undergrad in Ottawa, and a lot of my friend group around me were queer. And I myself even identify somewhere in there.
Okay.
So
I'm just gonna quickly look up what that means. But.
Okay. So it just means they're one of the LGBTQ.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's why I wanted to see what. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead. Continue.
Yeah. So I think it's just difficult when it's a very personal issue, or personal it's the beliefs don't.
Right. Clear.
And I have a hard time figuring out how to approach it.
Okay. Cool. So here's the thing, right? Well, Islam has some values and some rules. Okay, now these values serve for two things. One, it helps you work on yourself, that are you really submitting to God, right? And for different people, it's different things, right? Everybody has some sort of, so within the laws of Islam, especially when people are new to it, everybody has some challenge, right? And many people have multiple challenges. So that's something to remember. Now, the second thing is that those rules are not random. So it's not that, okay, let me just put this thing out. No. So those are also meant, they have a wisdom behind it that has a greater good for the community, right? It may not be like a short-term good, okay, I'm really struggling with this, but overall there's a greater good in the community. So that's two things to remember very importantly, right? Now, some people may have an issue with prayer. I can't wake up in the morning and perform prayer, right? So what should that person do, right? One option is to realize that, you know what, based on my research, I know this is from my God, right? And I accept it, right? And I will work towards it. And the other approach is, so you know the story of Satan and Adam and his wife. Okay, so there's a clear example in there, right? So before Satan was asked to prostrate to Adam, everything was nice, right? He's one of the really celebrated ones. He's with the honorable angels, and it's fine. But everybody has this thing that they will be tested with, right? So now his thing was arrogance, right? Now all of a sudden somebody else has a superiority over me, and that's not something I can accept. Before that, yeah, fine. As long as God is letting me enjoy and I have the power, no problem. But as long as you test me with this thing, that's when I get exposed. So what he did was he justified his way, right? Now, on the contrary, if you look at our Father and the example that he created for us, is that he wasn't given like a physical reason of what's wrong with the tree. It's not that, okay, this is poisonous, it's addictive, it has a lot of cholesterol, it has less ketones, you can't eat from. No, it was just like, okay, this is your hudud, this is your boundary. Everything else is permissible for you, don't do this, right? And Satan tapped into the desires of like, okay, you will live forever, you'll become like angels, you'll have a kingdom that will never perish. So he used those and connected it with the tree. Okay, and then Adam fell for it too. But then he repented. He didn't justify it. Oh, why did you create the tree? That's natural. You create a tree. So I will have a desire. If you don't want it to be like, don't create the tree, block it, whatever, right? When you realize that, yeah, I transgressed my boundary. There's so much things that are permissible, right? Now, so same thing, right? So that's something very important. So just like God doesn't want you to worship idols, and it's unjust to worship idols, God does not want you to eat non-halal food or pork or have alcohol and or have like intimate relationship with whoever you want, right? So there's certain boundaries, right? Now, yes, what Satan does, he associates pleasure with things that God doesn't want us to do, right? Whether by using image, by using thoughts, by using whispers, whatever, right? And now it becomes a personal struggle to work on it. If you see what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
So one of my point is that LGBTQ stuff is kind of similar to other rules in Islam as well, right? Like don't eat pork, right? And don't eat alcohol, don't do drugs, whatever, right? So all these things apply in the same category. So my question for you is that, okay, why does the LGBTQ ruling make it even more special, right? Why is it not viewed like other things that are prohibited in Islam, such as drugs, such as alcohol?
I think part of it is because it's one of the things that I find difficult in telling the people around me, because my family and my friends know, and I was like very like active in that community before, so it's gonna seem like a contradiction maybe, and I think it's just very hard. Like if a person, so I see it as an identity, which I know is not the way that it's seen within Islam. It's more as like desires that exist. And so I think that makes it a little bit different for me to imagine someone who would like have this identity and it's not necessarily something that can change, and you're not even legally allowed to try to change it in Ontario. Have to be like celibate for their entire life. It's just challenging.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I see. Yeah, so that it has become like a movement as well, right? But if you really think about the foundational value of that movement, well, there's an acceptance part of it, right? So like, having them equal opportunities in workplace and all those things, right? That stuff we don't control. It's not something that we impose on, right? And so that's a separate issue, right? And then there's also this underlying thing of that everybody should be allowed to do whatever they want, right? And that's just calling for absolute no values, no boundaries, nothing, right? And then obviously, one of the contentions is like, okay, where do you stop, right? Then, as people are already doing, like, let's put incest into it, right? Let's put, children into it, right? There's no stopping then, right? Where do you actually stop? So I see from that angle why it's important. But I'm saying that, okay, from a personal level, so there's two things, right? How does one deal with it personally, right? And how does one deal with it when explaining it to other people?
Mm-hmm.
So the key thing is that, just like how, how, for example, somebody would say, sorry, not that. Like how somebody would say that, Islam actually does have values against, abortion, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't just like abort a child unless it's like, clearly dangerous and so on and so forth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, so Islam has like values, right? So like, I mean, let's say if somebody were to ask me, like, yeah, I mean, this is similar to saying, okay, for example, one of the common things in the society is that, people have, sex outside of marriage, right? So what's Islam's ruling on that?
That's right.
Right? So even if it's hetero, right, it's still forbidden. So that's kind of like where we take it from. Right? Is that, yeah, there are certain values that are, un-Islamic, right? But if somebody were to commit that, does that mean that he or she becomes non-Muslim?
No.
Right? So it's a sin, it's a major sin, right? But as long as the person recognizes that it's a sin and I'm working on it, you don't become a non-Muslim just by that, right? Now there are various levels of it. One is like, you realize that, look, this is my challenge, I need to work on it. I'm still doing my prayers, right? So there's a whole spectrum of things. I'm taking care of my pillars, but that's my one thing that I'm working on, right? So that person would not be calling for it, okay, let's support it, let's celebrate it, let's everybody do it. It's different than when people are celebrating it, when people are pronouncing it, or if it's something that's done, behind the privacy of their homes, right? So that's a different thing, and you're working towards it. So that's how you would say to someone like, just like Islam doesn't allow premarital sex, Islam doesn't allow alcohol, Islam doesn't allow, these are things that are from God, right? So you have two options. One is that you accept them and then you work on doing that. Or you say, okay, no, I negate it, I challenge it. That's a different position to be in.
Okay.
So
for me, it's more like struggling just with the theory of it and the internal acceptance or not acceptance of it. It just historically speaking. I think it's a lot of changes that have happened in my life in a short amount of time. So
right.
It can be a little overwhelming. Personally, I have like attraction to both sexes, so I can just be like choose male and it will align, which is fortunate. I just have a lot of people in my life that that's not the case.
Right.
Because it's personal, it's more difficult.
Right. So so here's the thing, right? So my point is, those people are not Muslims, right? They don't pray. So I would be more concerned that they're not Muslims and they don't pray than about their sexual choices. That makes sense? Right? So, it would be way better for them to actually become Muslims, to learn the rulings and then work towards it, right? Because again, at the end of the day, it's like about the choices, right? So once people start valuing and loving Allah more, then they're able to have more discipline around things that Allah does not like, right? And then that can be worked out, right? And let's say, hypothetically speaking, if somebody has that challenge, it doesn't work out for them, and they're doing it behind the scenes, what have you, right? Then their matter is with Allah. I'm not here to judge them. You're not here to judge them, right? And, we see them as praying. We see them as practicing, right? Again, I don't know, but I'm just saying that behind the scenes, what they do is their private life, right? And, maybe there is a way that they can, work towards changing their desires, right? Like, I mean, for example, the point being that, look, I mean, there's been many sisters who have become Muslim, right? And they really liked to dress well and show off their beauty and whatnot. And now they love, being covered and, using hijab and so on and so forth, right? They don't have to discipline themselves to do it. They naturally do it. Obviously, there was a transition period where they may have to discipline themselves to do it, but now they love it, right? So what the heart loves is also something that Allah controls. So as you put in some effort, Allah makes it happen. So the concept of desires, I mean, the question is, can Allah not change a desire, right? So again, so if I were to break it down, I'd really like to break down things. Number one, personally at your level, you have to see that, okay, this is where I exist, right? And these are some of my challenges that make me sin prone, right? That will lead me to sins, right? Okay, how do I work on them? Very clear, right? That personally speaking, right? If I fall into sins, what do I do?
Repent.
You repent, and you say, okay, what can I do to make it better, whatever, right? Or how do I prevent myself from being in situations that would lead me to, doing stuff I don't want to do? When it comes to people, how do I explain it to them? Look, this is how it is, right? This is what Islam allows. This is what Islam doesn't allow, right? Things that Islam does not allow have categories, have layers. So what's most important of that is you to not worship your desires, not worship community, not worship a social identity, but to worship Allah and take your identity as Muslim. That's the most important thing. So once you have that, then is your 5 daily prayers, then other things like that. And any sin that you do, you don't go and call other people to commit to those things, right? So I mean, I assume you would agree that if you want to look at it at a global level, at a community level, if people were not to encourage other people to do it, it would have lesser impact, right? Now, then there's a different theory about it, like people who do it in the community, what do we do with them, right? So that's a different topic. We're not saying that, okay, we don't give them jobs or we don't let them do what they want. That's a different topic in itself, right?
Okay. Because I read a post and it was someone explaining the Muslim or the Islamic view on these topics, and then at the end talked about how it is understandable and permissible to fire someone if you found out that they were gay and talking about that at work and those kinds of things. So
okay, so here's my question, right? Then would that not apply to someone who does alcohol or promotes drugs or or does not even worship Allah or calls to atheism, right? Right. Would you go and fire them?
Personally, no. So that's why it's difficult for me to understand.
So that's the thing, right? So when you're running a business, obviously you have to look at the overall objective of the business, where you're running the business, what values your business wants to have, right? So for example, right now in this mosque, right, it's a different thing than me running a store, for example, right? But me running, let's say, a company that's traded on public market, right, stock market. But if I'm running a mosque, right, if we have a staff member that promotes this, right?
Yeah, it just doesn't align.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense for us to keep that person, right? Yeah, but again, it depends on the business, right? If I have my own family business, right, and and I value Islamic values, and hey, the business is about this thing. Let's be best and serve our customers, right? What you do behind in your homes doesn't concern it in that sense, right? But if you're gonna come in and then say, you're gonna promote a lifestyle, then I would have to think about it from a business perspective, right? So even in Islam, you have to weigh the harms and the benefits, right? What is the objective, right? If it's a clear thing that it's gonna, harm people, other people, whatever, right? So again, I haven't thought about this thoroughly, but I'm just saying that would be a business decision, right? But I can discuss some parameters that somebody would be thinking about. But what I would say is that same thing, the person should be considering that, okay, what about the person promoting atheism and Christianity, right? Similar to that, right? There's just being, and in the past, in the history, we have seen that Muslim businesses have employed non-Muslims.
Okay. Whew, a lot of info. Can I ask some of the more simple questions and then maybe come to other ones at another time? So is yoga haram? Because I read a lot of stuff online that said it was, but then I was listening to a podcast and they have a community space in Dallas and they were doing stuff and they were talking about how they have yoga for sisters. So then I got confused. Right.
I think, again, this term is also used by different people to mean different things.
Yeah.
Right. So I can send you some stuff on this, but in general, I don't see it to be haram.
Okay. Because I know a part of yoga is sun salutations, which is technically in the culture it was from, kind of worshiping the sun.
Right.
but I don't think that here is mainly used as like flexibility and aerobic training.
Yeah. So
does the intention matter?
Yeah. So intention definitely matters.
Uh-huh.
The environment matters,
Uh-huh.
right? So it's not so again, certain things are also like, some things are clear haram. All right. Some things you would have like reputable scholars that say, you know what, this is permissible. I don't see it as haram.
Mm-hmm.
Some scholars would say that, I see it as haram, right? Mm-hmm. Now you have two options. One is you can take the safest opinion and don't do it. Mm-hmm. Or you can look at the reasoning and then you say, you know what, I agree with this reasoning, and it's not something that I'm reasoning on my own, right? We don't want to be like, pseudo-rationalists like Satan and then say, okay, have our own reasoning. But people who have actually studied Islam in depth, and if they are saying that, this form of yoga is not haram, then you're not following your own opinion, you're following an opinion of someone you trust, right? So to the best of your knowledge, you don't think it's haram is something that Allah prohibits, and then you can go and do it, right? That would be the general approach, right? And then different, because I know there are Muslim sisters who run yoga programs, right? So they wouldn't do like, bowing down and some of the symbols that are very related to pagan worship and so on and so forth, right? So it depends on like, what kind of yoga program it is as well. And I'm sure that there are different programs that have different sort of values. Some programs may have, enchanting things that are, from pagan worship and things like that. Many programs don't.
Okay. And then as a naturopath, one of the common things they use to treat is a tincture. Do you know what that is?
Tincture? No.
Yeah, so it's an alcohol-based herbal supplement. So basically they like extract the properties of the herbs into alcohol, and that's used in treatment a lot with naturopaths.
Okay.
Can I prescribe that, or am I not allowed? Because I think that in clinic, when I'm a resident, that might be a bit out of my hand because it's the supervising ND that ultimately gets final say. But when I'm practicing on my own,
right,
it's very useful, but it is alcohol based.
So for those type of things, what we can do is I can follow up with someone who's like, because I don't have the knowledge or that's level of training to issue those type of things, which are very individualistic. So we can ask people of knowledge, and then we can see. But again, in certain scenarios, you may not have an option, right? So you may have to. That would be your personal choice to do some sort of a small thing for a greater good.
Yeah, right? And I wonder, like, a lot of the patients won't be Muslim, and they would be fine with taking alcohol, but because I'm Muslim, does that stop me from being able to prescribe it at all?
Right. So we can definitely look at that. And also from a solution perspective, like, is that intoxicating itself?
No. It's like a teaspoon or two a day, usually.
Right. But so one of the principles in Islam is that like, for example, if something, like if you were to take like a large amount of quantity of that thing and it intoxicates you, then the small quantity is haram as well, prohibited, right? But certain things are not like that. Like, let's say if it only has like, 0.001% alcohol, right? So hypothetically speaking, like, even if you were to drink jars of it, you'll just like throw up, but you wouldn't get intoxicated because it's so diluted, right? So that could be another way of looking at it. But definitely we can like, just send me an email about it and then we'll follow up on that with a proper person of knowledge.
Okay.
But another thing, like, one of the respected person that told me that, look, sometimes you may have to do a small amount of thing for the bigger good, right? So for example, if somebody wants to open a barber shop, right? That was the example he was giving, right? For you to get a license, you'll have to do everything, right? Including shaving the beard, even if you follow Islam and okay, men should not shave their beards, right? And then you're doing it just so that you get that license. That allows you to now have your own business with your own values. You can hire people, you can train people, right? So you may have to do some small thing, that as part of that, balancing act, right? But you still realize that, look, it was borderline, it was boundary line, you ask Allah for forgiveness and then you do one sort of thing.
Okay.
But we'll definitely follow up with that and get a proper ruling. Okay. But even if you get a ruling, okay, you shouldn't do it, and you end up doing it, right? Because at the end of the day, we will have things that we are not compliant about, right? As we talked about earlier.
Okay. Are Muslim men not supposed to shave at all, or are they allowed to trim?
Yeah, so that's again is a
is that like a varied?
Yeah, so there's a scholarly differences of opinion, right? And then again, so whenever there's a scholarly difference of opinion, you take someone that you trust in their level of knowledge as well as piety. If you can stick to something that's safest, and you stick to that, or you can do middle ground, or if you think, okay, you know what? So the question is basically, hey, does Allah want me to do this or not, right? Now, there may be some clear text and somebody will say, no, Allah doesn't want you to do that. But then you may have certain other indication that, okay, this indicates that this may be permissible, right? But then you're not judging on your own because we don't have that in-depth knowledge of things. We may know one statement, but we don't know 99. But somebody who is trained and properly studied, they know all varieties of rulings and how people implemented those rulings and all those details. If a statement is coming from one of the reputable one who is credible, knowledgeable, and verified by his peers, and then you choose that opinion, that would be fine in general. But the intention is that, okay, I want to do what's permissible, right? So even if it's impermissible, even if I desire it, I won't do it, right? But I won't just like make my own reasoning.
Okay. And then when you pray, I know that when you're on your knees, your right foot's supposed to be up and you're kind of supposed to be spinning more on the left foot. How necessary is that?
Yeah, so
really uncomfortable.
Right. Yes. Anything in general, anything that you can't do, you can't do, right?
Okay.
Right. So you try it, and you can't do it, then you let it go, right? Especially, for example, it wouldn't make sense for someone. Let's say you pray, your foot is hurting.
Yeah.
You can't think about Allah. You're thinking about your foot, right?
Yeah.
So it wouldn't, you have to look at the bigger picture and then see what you're able to do in terms of your own flexibility and whatnot.
Okay.
And then you try to be as close to it as possible, right? So for some people, it would be like, okay, just a standing foot, not, turning the toes.
Mm-hmm.
Some would be like flat, whatever.
Okay. I think that's enough for today.
Okay.
There's a lot of good stuff. I'll
Okay.
reflect on it. Maybe I can come back in a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
Talk about some other things.
Right. So you're aware of the mosque programs. Think about it if you want to join any of those things.
And they're online as well, right?
Yes, online stuff I've already sent you, like recorded ones that you can take and make progress towards.
Yeah.
But yeah, most of the lectures that happen here are recorded and put up online.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Including this conversation. So thank you so much. Okay.
Nice to meet you.
Likewise. Take care. Do you need any books from here? Feel free to